We just need some available. All right. Sorry for the brief today, everyone. Thank you and welcome to the afternoon talk on security, blockchain, and InnerSource. So for our first talk in the afternoon, we will be having Sumit Gupta, who is the founder of FOSSASIA, which is an organization that is being created to help all projects with their with marketing. So, the topic of this talk will be unlocking sustainability with AI, Web3, and open source technology. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you. Hello everyone, my name is Sumit Gupta, and I'm excited to be here to talk to you about unlocking sustainability with the power of AI, blockchain, and open source. I have
Yeah, we'll be using the last station as well. So the wireless microphone. The handheld. Take that out. Oh. Okay, good luck. Yeah, sorry, I didn't realize you.
no.
Sorry.
Let me know when I'm good to go. Hello everyone, my name is Sumit Gupta, and I'm excited to be here today to talk to you about unlocking sustainability with the power of AI, blockchain, and open source. I've got the opportunity to work with thought leaders, key communities, cutting-edge technical products in the field of sustainability. And the purpose of my session today is to show you how these technologies can help us address some of the most pressing environmental challenges we're facing today. By leveraging the power of AI, Web3, and open source, we can not only reduce our carbon footprint, conserve natural resources, but also create opportunities for innovation and growth. Sustainability is a critical issue. It affects us all, from individuals to governments to organizations. The world is facing a climate emergency, and we need to take action now to mitigate its impact. Technology can play a crucial role in this effort, and that's why I'm so passionate about spreading awareness for the same. Throughout the presentation, I will be sharing with you some real-world examples of how AI, blockchain, and open source products and technologies are already being used to unlock sustainability. We will explore their benefits, challenges, and potential applications. And I hope to inspire you to join the conversation and take the action towards a more sustainable future. Before we dive into the specific ways that technology can help unlock sustainability, let's first define what sustainability is and introduce the United Sustainable Development Goals. Sustainability is the ability to meet the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. In other words, it involves finding ways to use our resources in a way that is environmentally, socially, and economically responsible. This requires a holistic approach that takes into account the interconnectedness of environmental, social, and economic factors. The United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, are a set of 17 goals that were adopted by all UN member states in the year 2015 as a universal call to action to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure that all people enjoy peace and prosperity by the year 2030. The SDGs cover a wide range of issues, including poverty, hunger, health, education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, life below water, life on land, peace, justice and strong institutions, and partnership for these goals. Another acronym or word which cannot be ignored in the modern era of sustainability is ESG. ESG stands for Environmental, Social, and Governance. It is a set of standards used by investors and organizations to evaluate a company's sustainability performance. The ESG factors are becoming increasingly important for investors and stakeholders as they seek to align their investments with their values and promote sustainable and reasonable practices. Environmental factors refer to a company's impact on the environment, including its carbon footprint, use of natural resources, waste management, and pollution. Social factors refer to a company's impact on society, including its labor practices, human rights record, and community engagement. And governance factors refer to a company's internal policies and practices, including its board's composition, executive compensation, and transparency. Sustainability, ESG, and the UN SDGs are interconnected concepts that focus on creating a sustainable future for all. ESG criteria are used to evaluate a company's performance in relation to sustainability goals, including those outlined in the SDGs. The SDGs provide a framework for sustainable development and help guide decision making at the global level. By incorporating ESG factors into their operations, companies can contribute to achieving the SDGs and promoting sustainability. There are several ESG frameworks that have been developed across the globe to help investors and companies assess and report on their sustainability and ethical practices. Some of the most well-known frameworks include the Global Reporting Initiative (GRI), the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board (SASB), and the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, the TCFD. Each framework has its own objectives and focuses on different aspects of ESG. By taking a strategic approach to sustainability and ESG, businesses can generate multiple benefits, including financial returns, improved access to capital, and enhanced long-term value creation. In addition to promoting environmental and social responsibility, businesses can achieve their financial objectives and contribute to a more sustainable and just world. Sustainability and ESG are becoming increasingly important for businesses, investors, and other stakeholders. There are several reasons why businesses should take sustainability and ESG reporting seriously. It can help enhance a company's reputation and brand image, which can improve customer loyalty, attract socially responsible investors, and enhance employee engagement. It can help businesses identify and manage risks related to environmental, social, and governance issues, such as climate change, supply chain disruptions, and reputation damage. It can help businesses reduce cost by improving resource efficiency, minimizing waste, and lowering regulatory and compliance costs. Sustainability and ESG initiatives can generate financial returns and enhance long-term shareholder value. Studies have shown that companies with strong ESG performance are more likely to outperform their peers and generate higher returns on investment. By embracing sound sustainability principles, organizations are already reaping the rewards. Unilever, a global consumer goods company, has made sustainability a key part of its initiative. The company has set ambitious targets for reducing its environmental footprint, such as becoming carbon neutral by the year 2039 and ensuring that 100% of its plastic packaging is reusable recyclable, or compostable by 2025. Unilever's sustainability efforts have not only enhanced its reputation and brand image, but have also led to cost savings and new market opportunities. While there are multiple benefits of achieving ESG compliance, there are several challenges which businesses face, adding to their existing workload, which acts as a deterrent to take action. ESG compliance requires robust data management systems that can capture and track a wide range of environmental, social, and governance metrics. ESG compliance also requires transparent reporting and disclosure of ESG performance data. ESG compliance requires active engagement with a range of stakeholders, including investors, employees, customers, and regulators. Tech-enabled sustainability uses the latest advances in technology to achieve sustainable development and preserve our planet. By leveraging technology solutions, businesses can overcome the challenges of ESG compliance and reap the benefits of enhanced sustainability performance, improved stakeholder engagement, and enhanced long-term value creation. AI and machine learning technologies can help businesses analyze large volumes of ESG data more quickly and accurately. By using these technologies, businesses can identify ESG risks and opportunities more efficiently, enabling them to take proactive measures to address ESG issues and capitalize on ESG opportunities. Let me share some real-world examples to bring some more clarity on this. Google has developed an AI-powered system for managing its data centers, which accounts for a significant portion of the company's energy use. The system uses ML algorithms to optimize energy use, predicting demand, and adjusting cooling and other systems accordingly. By reducing energy use, Google has been able to cut costs and reduce its environmental impact. Web3 and blockchain technology can play a critical role in driving sustainable development by promoting transparency, collaboration, and accountability, enabling more efficient and sustainable economic systems, and creating a culture of sustainability. Let us look at some projects which are leveraging Web3 tech to unlock sustainability. Plastic Bank is a social enterprise that aims to reduce plastic waste and poverty at the same time. The organization has created a blockchain-based platform that allows individuals in developing countries to collect and recycle plastic waste in exchange of digital tokens, which can be used to purchase goods and services. Free and open source software is playing an increasingly vital role in saving the planet. With a growing concern over climate change, it has become more important than ever to find ways to reduce our environmental impact. The values of FOSS and sustainability overlap in their commitment to collaboration, innovation, and access. FOSS promotes collaboration by allowing anyone to contribute to the development of software, regardless of their background or resources. Similarly, sustainability requires collaboration and innovation to find solutions to complex environmental and social challenges. FOSS also promotes access by providing low cost of free software that can be customized to meet the unique needs of different communities. This is essential for sustainability as it allows more people to participate in the development of sustainable solutions and reduce waste. Ultimately, FOSS and sustainability share a common philosophy of empowering communities to work together towards a better future for all. Since I'm short on time, I'll just quickly speak about our open source product, NVixie. NVixie is our open source ESG performance management product. It is a powerful tool designed to help organizations achieve frictionless sustainability transformation. It's already being utilized by a wide range of organizations, including large manufacturing companies, PSUs, and financial corporations. Our product offers unparalleled insights into ESG metrics, allowing organizations to track progress and identify areas for improvement. With a user-friendly dashboard and easy-to-use reporting tool, it's never been easier to stay on sustainability goals. Looking ahead, we are excited to announce that future releases will focus on enhancing automation, supporting more frameworks, and making the solution even more comprehensive. We believe that this will help organizations achieve their sustainability objectives more efficiently and effectively. We invite developers from around the world to contribute to our project, bringing fresh ideas and expertise to help us build a more comprehensive and powerful solution. Together, we can create a sustainable future for all. I encourage all of you to explore the potential of AI, blockchain, and FOSS within your own organizations, and to consider how you can incorporate sustainable practices into your operations. By taking action towards sustainability, we can all play a role in creating a more sustainable future for our planet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? Yes, please.
Yes.
I was just wondering if you could talk about how you account for the environmental impact of things like AI and blockchain technologies. So they're working towards environmental development, but they can be incredibly carbon intensive and use a lot of fuel to improve trade.
So you mean like using AI and blockchain itself can contribute to pollution and like defeat the purpose of having this in place? So I understand that that is an actual concern, and a lot of these companies who are actually promoting Web3 and AI are already looking into it. As I mentioned, that Google is optimizing its data centers to reduce and use clean energy. So there was a slide about green software. So it is a intersection of software design and environmental science, where we study how we can use clean energy to power these resources. And for a matter of fact, an honest answer would be that the goal is to achieve net zero. Like it should be that the sum of everything that happens ends up being net zero. So even if you are consuming energy using AI and blockchain, you can offset that in some other method by supporting projects which are carbon negative.
Yeah, so follow-up question. So,
Yeah.
A lot of carbon offsetting has come under criticism at the moment because it's not necessarily seen as super effective. For example, one of Microsoft's carbon offsetting is this thing about moving around shepherds in
Right.
and it's for sure it's not super effective. So do you have any perspective?
Sure. So, like, see, I completely agree to the paranoia that is there around the standards that are there in the carbon offset projects. But I would also suggest that we'll have to be a little accommodating of that because they are also evolving. And it's not that there's nothing that is happening. Maybe like it's not 100% effective, but definitely like there is improvement. It's better than nothing actually. But you're correct that we still need to reach a stage where this entire ecosystem of carbon credit offset becomes more mature. So we will get there.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah. I think.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
we will be having a talk by Raymond Yang, CEO of Blue Finance, on DeFi should connect people, not isolate people. Over to you, Ray.
Thank you. Right, so I think we get sell a lot about this that blockchain and DeFi, is different, right? It's like game changer for 2 billion unbanked people in the world, right? That will change their life. And it talks about it's about being an open substation that anyone can participate in that you as an individual can join the big guys, right? We're talking about banks, we're talking about financial institutions, huge hedge fund firms. We go with the narrative, the Wall Street bets, and we take down the big hedge funds, right? We can join them, they will beat them at it. And then we talk about having very nice online, right? Where we can hang out with. I guess that's a great advice to have it at all. And this is not just about the financial, right? It's no longer about I have money or not, and it's about knowledge, right? When we look at DeFi in the current state right now, right? Can I have a show of hand who here has interacted with any DeFi protocol before, right? Wow, they're all saturated here, right? So look around you, right? There's only a couple of people. It's not many people. Right? Here, we're nowhere near the stage where we are getting 2 million people on board this platform. And here's what's irritating about it, right? When you try to join this ecosystem, usually do the best of that. Oh, this is the Ethereum fund. We'll do this and then we'll do that and we'll do that and this happened and that happened. Then you need to read a white paper that's like 70 pages long, right? Yeah. So you want to measure this, right? You're trying to swap money. Right, you go to the money changer, you give them US dollars, you get Sing dollars, you walk out with Sing dollars, you pay for things. It's just not so simple to show you lots of this. And maybe you should read this 70-page white paper because here are all the risks. And you are expected to be present, right? And on online community, right? If you're not, you're going to miss out certain things and you might do things that are harm yourself. Right, so it is really hard to process it, right? And really to help you bring it into perspective, I'm going to show you how it looks like in real world right now. Right, imagine this. So you are running through a bank, right? So you are trying to open a bank account, right? And what you need to do is you have to read through a bank financial statements and sign on 6 risk disclosure document before you can even open a bank account, right? Instead of this, okay. Let me just continue to simplify. I have to do you know that your money in the bank is not Sing dollars, it's called deposit, right? So that from the bank to you, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have the money in the bank, right? This is document number 1. Document number 2, right? Our service availability, right? Document number 3 and so on and so forth. You get my point, right? It's annoying, right? We don't do that in the offline world. Imagine this, right? You're trying to get Grab, right? We have a skill talking earlier about unknowingly you rack up like $600 deals on Grab. But instead of having that nice sweet interaction, you have this, right? So I'm clicking on phone. Hey, do you know that Grab price today gone up by 2.6%? Grab and take a look at this metrics over here. We have been live and what out for 30 days and things are flowing in. This is balance sheet, and imagine joining an Excel support group of the stock, right? And then hey, check this random function up there, and then everyone's like GM. And here's the thing, a lot of companies, a lot of protocol make them mistake, and so do we, right? So this is a journey, discovery for us, and I'm going to share with you. Maybe guess this is our company's dashboard, our protocol's dashboard. Can you guess what we do? Any takers? Right. I'm going to give you the answer. Basically, we fractionalize financial products, specifically fixed income products, that were previously available for only accredited investors, for the masses. right? That means you have access to your fixed income product 7% to 10% onward, right? And you don't have to put in a minimum sum of 50,000. Where is that on the screen? All right, it's actually right here. It's called or so this is what we did. We seek inspiration from other protocols because well, they raise a lot of money, right? Something they must have done something right? They have a lot of community who love them, right? And we expect everyone to be an expert user, or they are learning to be one. That's actually largely untrue. The real mistake in our journey is actually not knowing who our user is, right? We just assume that everyone is our user, everyone who is interested in this wants to know, hey, how does this smart contract works? Hey, how does the underlying protocol works? Hey, what's the risk over here? Who is holding on to the different keys? Who is doing all of those things? And we supply all this information to them in the name of transparency. But here's the thing about open source software, right? We want to be transparent, we want to be open, we want to be auditable, we want to be accountable, right? But when we try to do all of that, we tend to just overload users with extra information that they absolutely don't need, right? And this is a short journey of like how we learn from our mistakes. So just a few slides, right? So there's three tools that we use. This is really applicable to any software, as a software designer, anyway, right? It's number one, going through understanding the user journey, right? How do they make decisions, let's say around financials decisions, right? You start with like, oh, I'm first aware of something, I know that you access, right? And then you go on to like understanding what the spot is at pretty much surface layer, and then very quickly you have a switch inside your head, like, oh, is this interesting for me or is it not? That's where you are considering something, and then you go on like, oh, once I said yes internally, then I'm talking about like how do I get on board. And this is not very common in almost all softwares out there. Any of you who work in a big company, MNC, big tech, you look at your sales software, you look at your HR software, currently employees, you know the pain of that, right? That's the way it is, right? The manager thinks the software isn't thinking in the perspective of the person who's actually trying to apply for leave or the person trying to maintain, right? And understanding this user journey actually really helps you in breaking down what you need to show the user first. Because the first time they get onto your website, unless your company has already paid for it, so that's another thing. Right? The first time your users get onto your website, they're confused, they're going to drop. And we do intensive UX research these days, right? We want to see what our users are looking at, what catches their attention, what you need to zoom in on, what you need to zoom out on, how we layer information in a way that your user can consume. And this is not so. For instance, this is one of our preparation. You see, user doesn't even look at the channel text, right? In the name of open transparency, we present as much information as we do, but not written, right? So being able to make this kind of stuff actually helps you, engineer the data in a way that your users can consume, right? And we don't mean to do it in a way to hide information, but make it accessible at different stages of the user's consideration stage. And at the start, right? It helps if you really get in touch with the user, get in front of them, right? So what we did is that we have a wide user experience. You can see that's on different platforms. This is like some of the Telegram conversations that we have, right? We guide users the entire journey in, right? And sometimes we do something like, hey, you're trying to do this, can you go and do it yourself? And I would just like to watch you execute certain things, right? And very often, something that you think is very intuitive for the user, it's absolutely not. It's just something that your developer made up, right? And so what we were committed to is to actually reimagine this experience for our users so that they can better them navigate around the application. And that's really all software, right? So we want a clear product offering right at the front. So here you can see this dashboard that shows you everything about the actual product. So, and knowing your customers how, right? So we will be very specific about who are our users. And more importantly than that, you also need to be concerned about who are not your customers, right? So in our research, we see that there are four, many different segments of it. And we're saying no, right? We're saying no to customers who appears to be, let's say, early careers, right? These are the ones that are more interest, right? They're not looking for something like presentations and stuff like that. So they tend to like I'm looking for income that goes like 200x more, and certainly it's not the right kind of who you also want to attract. We're not looking for people who are also very well versed into this space, in the sense that they are looking for something else, not exactly the corporate reservations and financial growth in the period of like say 5 years, right? And the identified group we give them a name called alpha group, right? What does that mean? So in our case, right, alpha group is new career, is someone who has worked 3 to 5 years, have some investments as well, has had the experience with investments before. They know the trouble of trying to manage 10, 20 different investment portfolio. They know the trouble of they know the pain of getting say a market downturn, perhaps. I know the pain of something not delivering on the promise, right? And we can come in to tell them that hey, we can simplify this experience for you. We can get into certain products that you couldn't previously get into. It's kind of like open source financial products. And beyond that, this is also important on the organization of information. And I can't emphasize this enough, right? This is how users make decisions, right? They're not going to come and say that, hey, they might try to see how can I this one, try to see how I can apply this, I can try to see how I can get a claim, so on. Usually for certain products, those companies softwares, there's a first layer of awareness first, people first found about you. So at that point in time, you want to give them information to help them decide if the products are software solutions, solve their problem or not, right? From there, you add a few hooks inside to tell them that, hey, this is what makes it special compared to other software, perhaps, right? You want to get them to design your product from there, and all of this requires different level of information granularity and different types of information altogether, right? You don't want to overload them with everything right at the start. So how do you get that, right? This is the adoption curve, right? Generally, we all out there, right? Shock and denial right now. The earlier you get through this journey, try to realize what kind of experience the software is giving your user. The earlier you get to the last stage where you accept that there is something to be improved, and then you can act and integrate the solution to actually improve that journey for users. So how do you get to the first stage building in shock and try to first treat to right talk to users, map out what we are trying to do, talk some of the users, just put them in category, right, and give them the right experience, tell them that okay, I'm watching today, before you leave this room, I'm going to make sure that you actually get to this point, right? And hold their hands through the entire journey and see how much pain your software has caused them. And then once you start collecting analytics and what's of that, then you pretty much the rest is quite easy. So usually the first part is the hardest. So here's the thing, right? We are doing a lot of this experiment. Trying to understand how to do UX experience in a very technical-driven products. We're trying to understand financial behaviors across the globe. And if you're interested in the slightly softer aspects of software, which is user experience, I don't mean UI, but the user experience itself, You can join us for some of our research. I'd be happy to include you. There's an opt-in option where you can receive product information if which is something that you might be interested in. I'm happy to share with you some of our learning steps we have how to learn this product as well. So that is all for me. And thank you. I can take some questions.
Any questions?
Yes, go ahead.
So how do you deal with the, how do you expose these investments to people who are normally not qualified investors? Like, you're talking about bringing people together, right? The regulatory capture is one big thing. Just keeping people out of DeFi general seems like you guys are very fine.
Okay, so your question is on the products. I have to answer that. So how we do is basically it's a regulatory arbitrage altogether. So we have a simple entity that allows us to actually be the investor interface with the fintechs that are actually selling this. So we have names that are like the even the sales and others that right. So we have the names as the product provider. So they provide this kind of financial products. They are typically the loan originator as well. That means they give out loans to SMEs and whatnot. So very similarly to like the talk earlier, we talked about being able to support the businesses and so on. So that's how the products are structured. So from there, we actually use an entity that is regulated, that is regulated to actually buy products. So we use the DeFi from another company.
That's get back to what I understood being the title of that's not really a decentralized general DeFi solution that everybody else can do. That's what you guys are uniquely doing.
Exactly, right? So it's really what we're optimizing for. So if you note very early on, I don't introduce myself as CTO of a DeFi startup. I would say crypto startup, I'd say fintech startup. What we're optimizing for is actually financial inclusion for masses, right? It's not necessary that you have the full chain responses, all of these. Pretty much the rest of the world is still off chain, right? And even right, and you want to find ways to increase this. So that's what we come into as a middle layer.
More questions? Thank you very much. Let's give him a hand. Okay. Welcome everyone. So for our next session, we have Yukai, who is the founder of Biggest who will be giving a presentation on creating a Telegram app that generates AI art NFTs. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Hey guys. So my name is Yukai. I'm talking about how we talk about using a Telegram app to generate NFT, but AI art NFT using Stable Diffusion, which is an open source AI art model. I started like 100 slides long. So yeah, so I have to remove me from stage. Okay, about me, Yukai. I'm from Taiwan. I'm currently based in Bangkok because our company is in Bangkok. I've been doing that. I was in the finance industry for 5 years, in the DeFi industry for a year, and I'm now doing that stuff. But I'm also still in DeFi. This is my okay, just look at this. This is my NFT profile picture, which I purchased in 2021. But it's still new, so it's amazing. This is my first AI art, which I just fed my previous AI profile picture in DALL-E, and this came out. The first ever AI art. It was amazing. That's what got me into AI art. Yeah, so it's in a new phase. It's a less prompt. I on YouTube, screen background, eyes closed, ignoring the world's noise like a savage. Okay. I had this debate with our CTO about whether this is a copyright infringement. We did not have any outcome from that. So yeah, but this got me into AI art. I did some other stuff like this one. Our CTO went over there actually. It was his birthday, and I made an NFT with AI art as the image to give away to people as birthday gifts. So that was a true utility for AI, because for someone like me, drawing a painting from scratch is impossible. Okay, even if it happens, it's so I'll just use AI to do it. It's amazing. This is another one for another friend. She looks exactly like this, and I made an art for her. She bought me. Yeah, so you see, a lot of prompt engineering has been going on. This is not just some you feed in the thing and then it generates it. You have to. I made at least 100 tries to try this. The perfect one. She looks exactly like this with a black t-shirt, blue jeans, blonde hair. Her eyes are this big. She holds the camera in front of this, whatever background it is. AI art. So that was when I got in AI art early. Very, very chaotic. No one knows what's going on. But yeah, so I got some good outcomes from it. Oh, this is using custom model as well. So in Stable Diffusion, Stability AI trained this thing called Stable Diffusion too, right? But it's open source, so anyone can just take the model and fine-tune it into any style they want. So this Pathon next model is just someone taking the model and just make it everything look like anime. This is also open source. This is amazing. That's why I prefer Stable Diffusion over Midjourney or DALL-E. So this entire presentation will accept the first one. Everything else will be Stable Diffusion or its fine-tuned versions or its fork. Okay. Oh, and then I was thinking, hey, what if I don't put in any prompt? What will happen? And this was something that happened. No prompt, no title, nothing, just using the Pathon model. And I thought, this girl, I like to know with her, but yeah, it hasn't happened yet. Yeah, so this is where I got the idea of using all these amazing tools to generate NFTs. Now, so I started this NFT series called Girls on Ton. So Ton is a blockchain developed by Telegram, and they have NFTs on it. And it's a new blockchain. It's amazing on Telegram, so I was using it to do stuff. Okay, so this is the concept art for the entire series. I started it in January this year. So in January, I started using the idea of you keep using AI to make calendars. So this is the January calendar. It's a Chinese New Year theme. This is the bunny year of the Chinese calendar. So everything is a bunny. Now, because the Telegram mascot is a yellow duck, so I put yellow ducks in the thing. So and it goes along because it's yellow, right? And wearing yellow stuff. So yeah, you get the idea. So it's a Chinese New Year themed NFT. and these are the prompts. Okay, I'm using anything OpenAI for the model. This is a model for anime style stuff, but not pastel, but more like pencil anime. Okay, and I'll just keep going through these. This is another one. Oh, this is amazing. You see, the sleeves and the shirts. This is also another cool thing about AI art. It doesn't make sense, but it makes sense. It makes sense in a different way than how humans make sense out of things. Oh my God, I missed that. Okay, so another one, you can see a lot of dogs and bunnies. The words, the Chinese characters are not real Chinese characters because AI cannot, at that time, AI cannot write, not even English. But now Midjourney can do it, and Stable Diffusion, the new version, can do it. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so the fourth one, I like this one. I like this. Oh, again, same thing, but better. This one is my mom's favorite. Okay, February. So Valentine's. So you can see some improvements in the art already. See the hands. Not everyone can do hands like this. Okay. Okay. So also AI art. The hands are the most difficult thing in AI art. Just so you guys know. Okay. So Valentine's in the classroom, you get the idea. You get the idea. Ducks on tables. Doesn't make sense, but makes sense. Right? Doesn't make sense. Doesn't make any sense. It looks as it makes sense at the first glance, but if you look into the details, they don't make sense at all. For example, what is this thing? I don't know. Okay. Look at the fingers. Oh my God, amazing. Just look at that. This is extremely rare. It took me like 105 to get something like this. Okay, March. Going back into the pastel mix model. This is Sakura. Just showing you guys. Sakura. Very long legs. A nice dog floating in the air. Nice posture. I like it. This dog is ginormous. Easter, April. Right, Easter. So ducks and eggs. We back to bunnies again. Nice dog. Okay, I'll just go through these because they're the same thing. But you can see the the evolution of the font. Right? It gets simpler. Okay, not more complex. Nice facial expression. I like this one. Okay, no, this is a hack. What I call a hack. If you put in this string into the prompt, you don't use any English word, but you use this string into this model or some other model, it will usually generate a girl with open mouth looking surprised. So why does this prompt generate a girl that looks surprised? I don't know. No one knows. It's a hack. Okay, some other examples. This one is not surprised. It's the same prompt, but different seed. She looks as if she's in pain. Okay, two girls looking at each other, mouth open. I don't know what this is, but this reminds me of a friend of mine. The same prompt, all the same prompts, just different seed. This very, I don't know what she's doing, but she's looking back into her life and thinking about the mistakes she's made. Okay, this one has bare ears. I don't know why, but again, hold on. Okay, now back to pastel mix, another model, but the same prompt. And you'll see even weirder facial expressions. Weird facial expressions with this light thing, light ring. This is she a witch? I don't know. This is the weirdest. They usually have long, slender necks if you use this prompt. Even weird expression, she has horns or something like that. This thing here looks like a ghost. And her face is almost gone. Okay, a different experiment. I just put 9 eyes into the prompt, and then it will generate an even weirder facial expression. But I don't have time for that. But it's weird. I like the color of this one. You see the sunlight on her face, and how her eyes so even in the light. Yeah, very cool stuff. Okay, now I'm with some other stuff. So these are also some experimental images. So this the prompt is called Pink Village, and it generates 4 pink villages. And I like this one because there's a girl. Okay, silent village. Very amazing art. I like them. Okay, yellow village. It's always nighttime. Why? I don't know. Okay. Oh now, so I made this thing into a Telegram web. It's like Mid Journey. You can click reimagine variant of scale, and it does exactly what the machine does, but it's in Telegram. I don't have time to go through the code, but you get the idea. So this is all generated from the Telegram web. The Telegram bot. So the title is horror. Oh, by the way, I'm now using GPT to generate a prompt, and it's in the backend. So if you type in horror, a keyword, and then it will generate a prompt for you. I don't even know the prompt for this one. So it's called caption from now on. That's all. And GPT will write a caption for the image for you. So often these are also nightfall, shadow, scroll, longer, horror looks really amazing. Okay, this all entropy. Just look at the objects at a time. Okay, this one's called swamp. It's green. This one is called wow. That's the type of wow. And there is this. I don't know why, because it's GPT. Okay, Tarot, her face was sealed. Look at her face. And what are these red things under her dress? I'm still questioning that. This is called monster. There's a monster behind her inner monster. This is called storm. And you can see the entire image is more scrolly because there's over scroll in the prompt. This one is called postmodernism. It's very postmodernistic. Now I'm actually choosing the original stability 2.1. So it's not even more arty. It's not pastel or anime style. It's just random art style. It's called spaceship. Yesterday there's a sun beneath a hill, above another hill. What's going on? Right. This one's story. I like to try to use the same prompts again and again. Demon dog, but it's not because it's a tiger, I think. It looks like a pink hacker. A pink hacker generates a girl in hat in a field of flowers. Okay, turquoise village, striking villages. This one I like the keyword demon dog. Okay, this one called Siam, very colorful stuff. This one called two goats. I don't come up with this prompt, my friend does. Rogue robot, I like this art. Deep sea creature. This looks like some HRG art. Okay. Yeah. This one's called magic because it's the caption that determines what the engine will draw. Fragile, amazing art. This one my favorite. This is a Gustav Klimt style, but with an anime face. Jazz. It reminds me of famous jazz painting. I forgot the original painter, but it's this similar style. Okay, Plus Ocean. A lot of people like this one. I don't know why. Screens, very neon stuff. Okay, nice art. I like one. This one's pretty good too. I don't have time to explain the details of that, but I remember the process of every single one of them. It's amazing. This is a cat with 3 legs, or 3, and it looks like mouse. Okay, mechanical angel, amazing art. Space jellyfish, amazing. Alien art, it's not symmetrical from the center, but slightly tilted. I like it. Nice. This is some Henry Matisse-like art style. Oh yeah, so Elon Musk tweeted yesterday that turning AI design fashion into real clothing would be great, and that's what we're doing right now. So we're not just doing it on Telegram now. We're actually building a web service, printing all this art on T-shirts. Okay, so it is AI design fashion into real clothing service. So no time for that, but this is the prototype of our website. We're going to launch it within around a week. So we're aiming for more simplistic art to print on T-shirts and tote bags. Right, this tote bag is amazing. I want our art to be on this thing. It's good already, but yeah, it's good to have that representation. Right, so simplistic and these can be removed. Background can be removed. So because someone don't like square images, right? Mom Doge, just random prompt, go remove. So simplistic art from now on. I don't know, like this one. A lot of people like this one. It's designed. Oh, it's very similar to this one. If you think about it. Okay. Okay, it's neon jellyfish, a non-neon jellyfish. And there, a lot of people like this one. Swing bird, demon dog again. All generate. I not do any prompt engineering from now on. Rainbow dog. This is the last one I made 2 days ago. Okay. Okay, and this one, the proposition for team hacker, just letting you guys know. Okay, so any questions? Okay, time for the boss. Any questions?
Why are you building the website?
The what?
Wait, what are you building inside it? What's the tech?
The tech behind it is Stable Diffusion. It's the open source AI model.
No, the website, like, Austin is using like Next.js.
It's a Shopify store. It's a Shopify store that's connected to Stable Diffusion.
React is the.
Oh yes, using React to connect to yes. The React app.
React site.
Yeah, but it's part of my Shopify.
Yeah, just using Shopify back here and then front end using React.
Yes.
That's like how it is in Shopify. Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, just a quick question. So you had mentioned about the code, the Silicon one. Is that available on your GitHub by chance?
I have an open source, but I can open source it because it's open source.
So on the event announcement, there's your GitHub. There's link to your GitHub profile, so anyone searches it.
Oh yeah. I'll publish it. Yeah, I'll publish it.
Sure.
Thank you. So, more questions? What's that on your desk?
Oh yeah, that's illegal, so we talk about it.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? If no, then let's go to here.
Thank you very much. All right, welcome everyone to our next session. So we have here Dimitri's, sorry, Sirov,
Excellent.
Who is an engineering manager at a large retail company, as well as a board member of InnerSource Commons Foundation. He is going to be giving a talk on the top 10 ways to fail with InnerSource collaboration. Over to you.
Thank you, Sherry. So let's start. Hope you are in a great mood, and we can have next 20 minutes, 25 minutes with pleasure, and so on. So let me introduce myself. I'm engineering manager in retail company and also a board member of InnerSource Commons Foundation. It's the community of practitioners of InnerSource, and our goal is to make InnerSource as an industry standard way of development in the corporate world. And before I start my story, I would like to share you a question. What is actually InnerSource collaboration? And imagine you have two teams. First team needs some feature from another, and second team are unable to deliver in time. And what they can do next is to provide the code itself rather than to ask the feature and wait for the delivery. And after some time, the first team returns the code itself and providing them an open pull request, and the second team clicking on the big green button merge pull request, and then success. That's how it's explained in the books. That's how it usually occurs in open source. So you in the open source conference, you should be familiar with that. But the most typical case in the InnerSource world, in the companies, it's when the bug teams struggling and have a good amount of questions why it's not happening, why I should care about the other code, why, how to run it, how a good amount of questions. And in the end, we have a complaint from both sides that your InnerSource is not working. And you're going to talk how to fail your InnerSource collaboration. And know that ways you can avoid them and remove that friction. So let's start. And the first is about the culture. Usually, if the company develops software as it was usual some years ago, with positive stories, no readmes at all, and so on, and not managers don't encourage the teams to do a collaboration, and then you can face some problems or issues when you start to talk about, let's collaborate, let's live together and build a common software. Of course, that can be a problem. And the same for the cultural difference side. So if you are not familiar about the differences in different cultures, so for example, I work in the multi-national company, and sometimes I have no idea why my colleagues doing something. And knowing that helps me to understand it better and to remove the feature. What we can do here? So first, we can ensure that company boosts the collaboration. And maybe we should start to think about and improve the culture before we are starting talking about InnerSource, because that can be a good stopper to you. And secondly, we should know more about cultural differences. You can read the books, for example, the culture map is the good starting point for that. Or you can learn from your colleagues why they should do that, why they are doing something. And after all, that can be not a problem anymore for you, because you know why they doing in some way. Let's go into the second way to fail in collaboration. And that's about the motifs, that's about the answer question why they should do the collaboration. So since the inner source have the same roots, have the roots from open source, and open source is voluntary driven, and motivation about motivation about why I should collaborate comes from the personal feelings that I should do that, I must do that. And here is the same. And boss-driven development, because boss said that you should collaborate, will not work. And the answer here lies on the two sides. First, the side of the team or side of the company, and company should understand what benefits they achieve while adopting InnerSource principles, and they are listed on the left. And on the right side, we are not imagining this list of advantages that engineers receive after the InnerSource journey. They came from the latest research about the state of InnerSource. We asked practitioners what you had as a consequence, what engineers feel about InnerSource after some time of practicing, and they feel that they achieve these benefits. And only when they understand and truly believe that they will achieve that benefits, the InnerSource collaboration can appear. In other side, if your boss saying that you must collaborate, that's not work definitely. Let's go next. The next point about documentation. So you're in open source masters, and you know that's almost impossible to have a successful open source project and still be successful. But for the corporate world, it's a little bit differently, and especially when HR says that working product is much more important than documentation. You can fix the projects without any README, without any information how to run the application, how to start to develop, how to contribute there. And the answer here is to look on open source checklists. So, for example, through this link, you can open it and scan the items that you should have inside your project if you want to have a successful open source and then InnerSource project, plus some additional corporate stuff. And I call it like everything as code. So apart from the technical documentation, you also should have, and it will be great if you keep it near from the code, the business documentation, so explaining what in the business terms doing some parts of your system. Great if you have in the code mode business flows, explaining how your software is working, and then you can render the nice pictures from the code itself. The same for the architecture. So since you're integrating with another external systems inside your environment, so great if you will have that picture explaining what components your system have and what external systems your system is integrated with. And the same for the integrational part. Since you cannot live alone in the corporate world, you definitely will be integrated with someone else. It will be great to have contract. And this contract will allow you to generate some code, will allow you to build the UIs, and afterwards explain the InnerSource consumers how your software is working. And the same for infrastructure. You have common code, but your deployments are separately. And great to have examples how to deploy this code. And that can dramatically increase the speed of onboarding of new InnerSource customers, since you're explaining how to create everything needed for this particular software. And in the end, we have set of open source documentations, set of corporate level documentations, and then you can have success on the documentation for InnerSource. Going next, are you ready? And next about the talking and speaking between the teams. And sometimes people not familiar with open source principles trying to looking so open repository. I will spend a good amount of time writing the code and send the contributions, and then this contribution is refused. Why is happening? Because many reasons. Because they already support that function, because it's architecturally incorrect, or because anything. And the answer here lies on both sides. On the first side, it will be great to have the house rules, make them visible to explain what is your next plans for the next subsequent months and so on. And mentor the guests, mentor the contributors that want to have something from your system. The same for the same for the second team. Great to know the rules, know the functions that the system supports, and so on, and discuss your needs before. And that's the two-way road, and that's the key answer on the question how to not waste a good amount of time while doing anything. Going to the technical part. And technically, your system can be monstrous, monolith, without any opportunity to easily adapt to slightly different needs, let's say. And here on the slide, just my example of a modular architecture that supports the InnerSource collaboration. What I mean, again, your system will be integrated with another, and then you should integrate different master data system, different external system. That means that you should have a special layer called adapter, and easily replace adapter to another if the different environments have different systems. And the same for frontend. Your needs can be mobile application, and some needs a web application. You can have different design systems, and then your system should support a different way of working in terms of frontend. And the same for backend. You can have different business requirements, and it will be great if your system will be easily replaceable by parts. And some parts can be common, some parts can be custom. And that's architectural approach can help you to build the InnerSource collaboration. Then your system can help as much as possible customers inside your company. Going next. And next item and next way to fail is about the DevOps practices and optimization and so on. So imagine you have a team, this team, and you are receiving a bunch of contribution from external teams, and you should review them. You should ensure that your system will not be broken after this contribution and so on. And it's great to make a release, especially if you have special team for responsible for rollout, especially when you have a good amount of things manually to do in terms of the release. And that's the painful collaboration will be to you. And the answer here is to bring DevOps practices, DevOps optimization, and so on and so on. And just a little example about that. And the point on this one here, this slide is look on. Here is example about Git, but you can explore that it's not connected only with Git. You can go to your project, explore is your practices and approach that you applied in your project are good in terms of delivery speed, in terms of understanding, in terms of they support this way of collaboration. A little example, Git flow on the left, GitHub flow, or any other flow but simpler than Git flow on the right. And can you guess what is more powerful in terms of, let's say, in terms of attacking with the external contributions? I think on the right? And afterwards, making decisions and scanning through all processes that you use inside your project, you can answer yourself that is your practices and tools and processes are okay to handling the external contributions. Then you have you can apply bunch of processes and practices that help you to live with that kind of way of working. For example, feature flags, you can bring it to your project and merge as soon as possible the function, especially then where this function is still not tested, but you're able to do it because you're merging it and bringing production into off mode. And then when it will be ready, you are turning it on, and then you are delivering it as fast as possible. So since you have external contributors, they will be happy to test it manually to ensure that this whole system will okay after contribution. You can opt up the separate deployment for every feature, for every incoming feature, and then will be safer to you, to yourself, to your project. That's the quality of the project will be at the same level than it was before contribution. And the point here is that will be great if you will ensure that your infrastructure is smart enough. Here is the set of open source tools, but it's just one of examples. It's my personal choice. You can choose your own personal set of tools. The point here is to ensure that is your infrastructure smart enough, is your delivery pipeline is flexible enough in order to tackle with InnerSource collaboration. And if yes, then you will be successful in that kind of collaboration. If no, maybe you should think about bringing new technologies, bringing new practices inside the project. Number 9. And number 9 about the tests. Imagine again, you're handling incoming contributions, and each time you should do a good amount of stuff in terms of checking that is your system still okay, is your system the good quality. And great if those checks will be automatically, because no customer wants to wait for a long time while you will say to them, please change the thousand spaces, and that will be answered after 1 week of waiting, and that's not so good in terms of speed of working. And the same for linters, style checkers, quality data you have to pass in terms of being the code merged into production, and that's the whole stuff help you to boost the speed to make the collaborators happier. So that's what the list of InnerSource stoppers, the ways how to fail InnerSource collaboration. The idea here is to look on them and think, are you doing some of them, or you can avoid and remove friction while doing InnerSource collaboration. And only the last point left, last way to fail, and this is the 10 way to fail. So the idea is that you got a list of ways to fail the InnerSource collaboration. What can do here in order to make a successful collaboration? First, after the conference, you will go to the work, and maybe you're already working in the project that's collaborating with InnerSource. Maybe you can define the project, especially who can take the advantages from InnerSource, needed by a good amount of teams, and you can bring their InnerSource. Second, you can assess the process, the practices, the tools that are used in this process, used in this project, and then somehow to avoid them and remove that friction, start an experiment, and try to bring more engineering practices that help the team to get these InnerSource advantages and benefits. So in the end, InnerSource contribution will be like that, clicking on the big green button, and then success. Thank you for watching. I'm ready for your questions.
5 minutes for questions. Any questions?
Everything is clear.
Here.
My question, what is InnerSource?
I think that's something people are still trying to figure out.
Then I have a question to you all. Are you practicing InnerSource in your work? Or you? No? Yes, yes. 1, 2. The interesting point here that's much more practicing InnerSource at work, but not only like InnerSource. And the fact is, if you're working with that work, you can bring your company to best practices. You can find the practitioners you can consult with. You can find patterns that you can bring your company and so on. And you can go to InnerSource Commons community and check their materials that help you to bring the engineering put in the practices inside the company. Okay, thank you all for having me. Have a good day.
Thanks, Dimitri. Yes. And you know, that's what works for you. The end before the start. Very bad. It's like mental. You know, the age.
Beautiful. It should be like astronaut. Yeah. But here's the
Everyone?
You ready?
here's no repeat. And then
Do you
Can I do what?
stop showing the showing again? It just
Let me try it again.
yes.
That. Share screen. Yes.
put that screen there and we'll oh,
Are we good?
Just a moment.
okay. I just asked another group of people. They just have a stage. They're only just they can come here. Yeah.
Okay. That's fine. We can wait a bit. Relationships over contract. So it starts at the 3:05. I know our relationships over.
Start now.
We've had a relationship without this. Screen guards is broken. So everyone, our screen system is down, so we're just waiting for it to come back up. For the benefit of our remote viewers.
我知道还有说问题，因为太累了。
Stream guy. Is that the stream? 他们有。
忘记了。
So what's up?
Yeah, they're good.
Are we good?
Okay.
I think we're good now.
So happy to introduce you. Hey, give me a thumbs up.
Oh, yeah, good.
We're streaming?
Yeah.
Excellent. So, today we have Rich Bowen, Principal Evangelist Open Source at AWS. Rich has been involved in open source since before we started calling it that. He's a member of the Apache Software Foundation, where he currently serves as a board member and VP of conference. Rich is an open source evangelist at AWS. Now, also, I just wanted to add that remember, Amazon has, for the last few years, been having quite a rocky relationship with the open source communities. And so, Rich is there in the trenches, helping to change the way they do things. So he has some very interesting stories to tell about talking with management about InnerSource. Over to you, Rich.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all. So like he said, I've been doing open source for a while, and one thing that I've learned over the years is that when you talk to your management about open source, they know that you're passionate about it, but they don't know what you're talking about because your priorities are very different from theirs. Yeah, I have been working with the Apache Software Foundation since some year that started in 19, and I started out that way, extremely passionate about open source, and then you go and you talk to your manager about it, and they say, like, we don't have any idea what you're talking about. And how many of you all work with open source at work? Woo! So you want to keep doing that. That's why you want to learn these things. You want to persuade your manager that this is a worthwhile thing for you to spend your time on. So let's start with a question. Why do you do open source? Somebody tell me why you're interested in open source.
Obsession.
Speak up.
Scratching an itch.
All right, scratching an itch, implementing a feature that you wanted. What else have we got? Okay. Make a lot of friends. That's something that's not important to your manager. And in fact, some of the things that we hear, scratching your own itch, it's fun, socialization, altruism, giving back, making the world a better place, building your resume. These are some of the top reasons that people give for participating in open source. And your manager doesn't care about most of these things. What we love about FOSSASIA is that we get to sit around a campfire with the people that share our interests, and we get to talk about these things that excite us, to talk about the technology that we're interested in. We all have funny stories about our management who just doesn't get it, and we like to laugh about it behind their backs. But next week you have to go back to work, and you have to tell them that your time here was worthwhile. And all of those reasons that people give for participating in open source, that is not why your company cares about open source. Your company cares about making a profit. They care about serving their customers and making their customers happy. They care about making a profit. They care about retaining employees, and they care about making a profit. And so these are most of the things that you want to persuade your manager about. Now, of course, I'm not talking about your manager. Your manager let you come here, and so obviously they're awesome. My manager is the president of the Apache Software Foundation. So when I talk to him about open source, he gets it, he understands it. But his manager is a brilliant person who knows a lot about product marketing, not a lot about open source. So when we talk with her, we need to make sure that we are communicating. Now, as I was writing this talk, it started coming across as, how do you lie about what you do in order to persuade your manager that really you're working for them? And that's not what I'm talking about at all. Because open source is primarily about pragmatism. It's about solving problems in ways that work. and collaborating with people in ways that work. But the way that we talk about it tends not to communicate that. We talk about how fun it is and how we like hanging out with our friends, which is true. But again, not what they care about. Now, the other thing that I want to mention is that different open source projects are different. You know, they're weird. They each have their own unique culture. And some of them have unpleasant people as maintainers. And so maybe the things that you try to do in open source won't be successful. So don't think that the things that I'm saying here are a promise. It's just sort of that you need to speak the language of management. This is about translation. Translating the things that you're passionate about into things that your management will actually care about. And like I said before, it's important that these are things that are true. You know, we're not trying to pull the wool over management's eyes so that we can go and play with our friends. So remember that open source is above all practical. It's objectively a better way to build software. And this is supported by study after study. Open source software has numerous advantages. We just need to talk about it in ways that convince our management of that. And in order to do that, you need to think about what's good for the company, what's good for your customers. And so, you know, I work at AWS. One of our catchphrases is that we are aggressively customer focused. Everything that we do is about doing what is good for the customer. And so you need to know who your customer is, right? Well, like when you're giving a conference presentation, you need to know who your audience is. When you're building a product, you need to know who your customer is. So you can't just go and hide in your office and write code. You have to understand who your customer is. You have to understand what you're delivering to them, and that's part of what's in it for the company. Another thing that's in it for the company is the cost. What does it cost to develop software? Does open source help that? Maybe it does. It depends upon what particular part of the industry you're in. Another thing that open source gives to your company is reputation. And so that's one of the other things we'll talk about. Now, rule number one when you're talking to your manager about open source is don't get bogged down in philosophy. They don't care about the distinction between free software and open source software. And you and I could talk about that for 2 hours and just scratch the surface of it. Your manager does not care. And if you start talking about that, their eyes will glaze over and they will cut your budget. So don't do that. Another thing that they don't care about is license. They don't care whether your software is Apache or MIT or AGPL 2, 3, or 4. It doesn't matter. What they care about is whether it serves the needs of the customer. The other thing to remember is that you have a minute. You don't have 2 hours. You don't have the opportunity to say, what you really need to do is go read Eric Raymond's The Cathedral and the Bazaar and then get back to me. No, you have a minute. You have the time between 2 floors riding in the elevator. And if you cannot communicate during that time, then you have missed your opportunity. I remember one of the earliest open source conferences I went to. Richard Stallman and Miguel de Icaza were discussing the relative benefits of open source versus free software, and it was just eye-glazing. It was there was no point that came out of it, except when Miguel said, if we have this conversation in front of our management, they're going to fire us. What we need to focus on is the solutions, the problems that we're solving. So what are you going to talk to them about? Some of you all said, some of the people in the survey said that they're interested in giving back to the community. Your company is not a charity. They are not interested in giving back to the community. Management sees open source typically as a renewable resource. It's this free thing out there that we go and harvest, and then we build our product with the harvest. And your attitude that open source contribution is a moral obligation or for the greater good or something like that comes across as complete nonsense if you don't tie it to a business benefit. So giving back, the way that you should instead talk about this is the supply chain. Your manager read a book last week about the supply chain and software as bills of material, and they're anxious to talk about that because that's actually relevant to their business. Now, if you are building a product on top of an open source project, then it is in your business's best interest that that project is healthy and sustainable. So if that project is hosted at the Apache Software Foundation, maybe you should consider sponsoring the Apache Software Foundation. If that project is at the CNCF, maybe you should consider having one of your engineers working full-time on that upstream project. These are ways that you can sustain the project so that your business is around next year. It's not just about downloading the version that was released yesterday. It's about ensuring that there will be a version released next year. And so talking about getting back to the community, it sounds very philosophical. Talking about sustaining the supply chain so that that little red paper clip doesn't break next week. That's what's of more interest to your manager. Obligatory XKCD that you've seen 3 times already this week. If you are working on this project here and it fails and your business is a thing up on top, you might be out of luck. Support these arguments with data. If your product is based on open source, then you can say 73% of our profit is directly related to the success of this project that you hadn't heard of until last week. But if we don't contribute our fixes back upstream, then that portion of our profit is at risk. So this is a quote here from, it's actually not a quote, it's a made up press release. But if you can say something like this, Apache Commons is a critical component of our product, and that product earned us this much profit last year. And if that project fails, our company fails. Data is your friend. Sustainable open source is a project that's around next year. You have to think long term. So things that you need to think about in sustainable open source is, are we building this project, are we building our product on top of a project that is developed by our competitor? Is that a problem? Maybe we should go be participating more in that project so that it's not a single vendor project. Are we building our product on top of a project that is maintained by one engineer who lives in the Czech Republic and is unemployed right now? Maybe we should hire that guy. And then also maybe we should devote an engineer to that project so that it's not just that one person, but it's 2 or 3 people that are supporting this so that maybe that engineer can take a vacation and not burn out and quit next month. If we participate in this project, then we are by proxy making our customers heard in the roadmap for that project. That sounds important. These are all aspects of sustainable open source projects to make sure that your stakeholders are heard when they're discussing what's going to go into the next version, rather than just waiting around and hoping that maybe that next version will fix this bug that we care about, because it won't if you don't participate. All right, another reason that people give for participating in open source is earning merit and reputation. And I'm probably the only person in this room old enough to have seen that movie, so maybe that's not a good screen there. But it's from a movie called The Breakfast Club in the 80s, where these 2 individuals were vying for reputation in school. But your manager doesn't really care about your reputation in open source. So instead, talk about earning trust and influence in the project. So for example, if you are building a cloud-based solution based on top of Kubernetes, and there's a bug that's affecting your customers, and you go and complain on the mailing list, you're going to get ignored if they have no reason to listen to you. So if you participate in that open source project, if you have an engineer in your company that is contributing actively to that project, then your company will, by osmosis, gain a reputation within that project. And they'll be more likely to listen to you when you complain about a particular bug. So this is a way to convince your manager that participating in that project is actually worth their time and their money to invest in that. You should be careful when you try to participate in open source, that you actually understand open source culture. It can be dangerous to talk about how your product is built on top of an open source project. And then the people in that project say, this is not somebody that participates. This is not somebody that contributes. They're just benefiting from our work. And you know, this is a problem with many big companies, not naming any in particular, that build their products on top of open source software and then go out and talk about how they're an expert in this field. And then the community comes back and says, no, they're really not. You've never heard of them. So you need to be careful that you. One of the phrases that I use at work is "be, don't seem," which means don't pretend that you're great in a particular open source field. Actually, be that way. Go do the work. Put in the time. Become an expert. Contribute, and earn that reputation. Be, don't seem. Also, talk about adoption. What slide am I on? I need to pick up the pace just a little bit. Talk about how the adoption of an open source project benefits your company that's based on top of that open source project, if you have expertise. So what we found at AWS is that people don't choose AWS. What they do is they choose a technology, and then they go and they look to see who's the best at running that technology. Is it Google Cloud? Is it Azure? Is it AWS? I want to run Kafka. What's the best place to run Kafka? Is it Confluent? Is it AWS? Let's look and see what the reviews say. But first, I've chosen Kafka. And so you need to talk about how participating in open source builds that reputation, which then drives adoption. All right, here's a fun one. We love to talk about collaboration. I work at Amazon, and if I work on this project, I'm going to be collaborating with Google. And management says, why on earth would we want to benefit our competitor? So what your manager hears is that you're going to lose control of your product by ceding that control over to a competitor. Instead, talk about focusing on what your company excels at. So again, I work for AWS. What we excel at is infrastructure and scale. You know, we have some people that are working on Kafka, and they're good at it, but that's not what we sell. What we sell is the managed hosting, right? So talk about, and so making, commoditizing the software allows customers to build and test at home on this software that they can download and use for free. But what we're selling is not the software. What we're selling is the service. So this notion of loss of control is a bit of a sidetrack, because it's not about controlling the software. It's about influencing where it goes based on your customers. But everybody's customers have similar issues that they're trying to solve, and that's not what we're competing on. All right, some of you all said that you do open source because it's fun. Open source is an endless party. I get to travel around the world and hang out with my best friends, and I've been doing that for 20 years, and it's awesome. And I'm very careful not to say that to my manager. Instead, talk about recruitment. Talk about how participating in open source makes your office a great place to work, and that makes it easier to acquire the best employees. Your company doesn't mind you having fun, but it's not really what they're there for. Now, the flip side of this is make sure that if you hire someone with the promise that they will get to work on open source, that they get to work on open source. Because if you hire someone and then if you hire someone and say, you're going to get to work on Apache Airflow all day, every day, and then when they get there, they say, well, you know, actually what I need you to do is spend the next 6 weeks solving this JavaScript problem over here. They're going to tell all their friends, and it's going to be harder to recruit people. So make sure that you make good on your promises. Note that open source people, whatever that means, can be very opinionated. They tend to lean towards being anarchic and libertarian. It can be difficult to manage. They want to go and do their own thing. So make sure you understand what you're getting into when you hire open source people. But they're also very creative. I mean, look around you at the brilliant people in this room. It's really a great opportunity. If you let people work on open source, it feeds that creativity. It gets the best of the world's engineers to work on your product. You know, one cool thing about open source is that no matter what company you work for, the smartest people in the world work somewhere else. And if you can get them to collaborate on your product, then you're winning and they're winning. Another thing that people often say open source is good for is building your resume. Your manager is particularly not interested in you building your resume. Instead, talk about continuing education. I can go work with some of the best engineers in the world on a piece of software. I can learn from them, and someone else is paying them. This is a really win-win situation. Now, one of the other things that your manager might think is that open source is free. And I like to say it's free as in free puppies. You know, when somebody gives your kid a free puppy, that is not free. Be very cautious about talking about open source as free or cheap or reducing costs. You know, it might, but those costs go somewhere else. The software is free, you still have to hire people to maintain it and to build it. So instead, talk about customer value. Open source builds better software. Software is easy, people are hard. And you want to ensure that you are investing your people in the right kind of development. And I am almost out of time, but you want to avoid letting your management think that they can just go grab a piece of free software, bring it internal, make the changes that they want, and then sit on it forever. Because that means that they have to maintain it forever. So make sure that your management understands the right way to interact with open source. And that's basically my day job, is helping management understand the right way to interact with open source. Let's see. Yeah, I'm out of time. Does anybody have any questions? I can talk about this literally for hours, but does anyone have any questions in my last 1 minute? Yes.
How do I have the conversation about getting them to open source something that I've created for internal use?
So the question is, how do you get your management to agree to open source something you built internally? And it's really hard. You have to be able to demonstrate. So first of all, you need to know why you're open sourcing it, and you need to have an answer to that question. And that's going to be different for every project. And there are many reasons to open source something. The other thing you need to be able to convince your management of is that you're not giving away the secret sauce. And in order to do that, you need to understand what your business is. And so this is what I was talking about earlier. AWS doesn't sell open source software. We sell the services on top of that. And so you need to be able to clearly communicate that the software is not the value and that the collaboration is only going to enhance that. But yeah, it's a hard conversation and everyone's different, but you need to make sure you know your own reasons first. There was someone over here, yes?
Yeah, maybe a slightly contextual question. But what are the big business values now for not open source? I would say software, but the data, the fact that you can now validate it into an AI model. I mean, I'm just trying to get a feel of how that affects the community in some sense, because now it's like, oh, why should we support open source? All there can push this into a model, into autopilot and train a new AI model, right? And that's cool.
Yeah.
Easy to sell.
That is a very large question that we don't have time for. Yeah, again, it's always going to be very dependent on the specific type of project that you're working on. But I don't know, maybe we can take that after this because we're completely out of time.
A small one. Any suggestions for the managers?
So what I would suggest for the managers is that they attend this conference. I mean that very seriously, that they attend this conference, or if they're in Europe, that they attend FOSSASIA, or if they're in North America, that they attend the open source, the Linux Foundation's Open Source Summit. And the reason for that is that open source is 75% culture and 25% software. And understanding the culture and the collaboration behind this, understanding that when you get into a room with people like this, you hear weird presentations like the one that you gave that open your eyes to something that you hadn't really thought about before. That's really, that's not something that I would have studied on my own, but attending your talk, my eyes were open to something that was brand new, right? And so attending events like this, I think, is the answer. Thank you all so much.
For the stocks schedule, so if you want to hunt for coffee or take a bathroom break, that's fine.
Are you welcome to help yourself to stickers? We have stickers. Stickers. So if you want to protect your laptop against crackware and proprietary software, take some stickers.
Yeah, just one sticker is enough for like 30 days.
It's right here.
So the owl keeps watch over your laptop when you sleep, right?
That's right.
What does this have to do with leveling up?
Leveling up level up software development analytics. This saves your software from bugs. A simple act of sticking it on. Right. True. Why would I lie? For many reasons.
Everything as accurate as ChatGPT can generate for you.
Yes.
I have one of those as well. It doesn't look like me at all. It's for a different audience.
That was generated by Stable Diffusion.
The guy just left.
There is no cap still.
No laptop cap?
No, no, just no.
This one?
Yeah.
This is not okay. That's all.
So maybe you have to like notify something. Well, I can find it into the instruction. Because the E is someone just came over and just starts refresh it. And it's just the F30 of that area. Literally, okay. And the can display or something like that.
Okay. Okay. This is lit, so it should be working.
No, maybe I just plug in and plug. I don't know.
Sometimes it works. I don't really know why.
Sharing still working, right?
The slides are on. I see that.
No, I did.
It doesn't really sound.
It's kind of like the deduction. So, that's old school. Large the notaries. Like
No,
the building.
the case.
So,
Okay.
Huh? Yeah.
So can have the look at no, I don't know.
Can make your organization's software development process much better to give you better outcomes for your customers. Also, you have a look at data visualization tools like Grimoire Labs, which can help you track progress. Track you also not true. Identify areas for improvement and help to build a very InnerSource community within your organization. So without further ado, let's welcome Mishari.
Thank you, Alex, for the kind introduction. So, hello, I'm Mishari Mobile. Today, I am going to talk about breaking down your silos using metrics. So, a bit about me. I have been in tech for over 25 years now. I'm presently partnered up with Detergia and am their senior consultant for East Asia. I'm also the acting vice president of the Open Tech Association of Thailand. We're trying to promote the open source culture in Thai society and organizations. And because I love open source so much, I have decided to homeschool my kids. This is actually applying open source culture to raising child, and that earned me a TED Talk and this lovely photo of me, which looks nothing like the real me. Detergia. Again, 50 years of expertise, very smart folks there. They founded the Code Chaos project in 2017, which is about using metrics for software development and communities. We'll talk a little bit about that later. Maintains the open source Grimoire Lab metrics tools, and is the official metric partner of Open Infra and Non-Focused Foundations. There's a suite of services from Detergia, from the analytics part, as well as doing customizations, consultants, etc., around all this. So a lot of companies have trusted Detergia with our output. So silos, right? Silos are an amazing place to store your brain and your code, right? Most organizations are silos. What does this mean is that when you work in your company, you work within your own silo. Who here works in a large corporation? Like, let's say over 100, over 1,000, right? So you will understand that reaching out to someone across your organization is extremely difficult, right? Basically, for the most part, you have very little interaction with them if you are if you're working in a silo. Your only interface with the rest of your organization is your boss, right? And it is up to your boss to coordinate and communicate, no matter what you need. If it's anything that's outside your team, talk to your boss. So this is a feature, not a bug. It has been developed in the pre-internet days, and it's often a very easy way of managing people and teams. Right? Use your boss as an interface. We write modular code. with loose coupling. This is loosely coupled organizations, sort of. So let's say you work in your silo, right? And you have developed a tool. Let's say that the tool is a hammer and a spanner. And you build or acquire or buy a hammer and a spanner for use within your department. Cool. Another silo, right? A continent away, maybe, also uses a hammer and a silo, uses a hammer and a spanner, right? But you guys don't talk. You guys don't know that you have built your hammers and spanners. So they start building the hammer and a spanner from scratch. A third only happens to need a hammer, so they build their own hammer. So in the end, you have your silos, each with their variations of hammers, and which are made and maintained by themselves. So, and they are there because they are there to solve a problem, right? But you have to go back, really go back and ask yourself, do your customers pay you for your hammers? Because you have been spending a lot of time and effort and resources making hammers, right? So unless you are a hammer company, unless you are a hardware company making hammers, your customers are not paying you for your hammers, right? They are a tool that you need in order to get your work done, but they're not paying you for your hammers. They are, however, paying you for the end product of what your hammer makes. So if we were using physical hammers, this is justified, right? Every silo needs its own hammers. But we're talking about digital artifacts, code. The hammers are only metaphors. So back to our hammers. In order to remove waste here, let's break down these silos. We put all your tools in a central place. Because it's in the sky, conveniently, there are clouds. So we put them in the clouds. All right. The difference when you're sharing physical hammers, physical items such as hammers, is that physical items are a zero-sum game. You give someone a hammer, you don't have a hammer. However, when you give away code, both of you end up retaining the code. So the tool becomes, it benefits everyone who participates in the sharing. And because it's been improved together, it's been tested, then it's improved, people, the tools get better because it has been tested under diverse conditions and improved under conditions. So rather than each silo maintaining their entire tool chain from the beginning, all the tooling from the beginning, everyone shares it. So you can have your silos, right? One can do bug fixes, another one support, another education, security, so on and so forth. So the resources available to improve your hammers is multiplied. At the same time, the resources required to maintain it becomes a fraction of its original resource. So, which is why breaking down your silos increases efficiencies, right? With InnerSource, it helps you free up resources to pursue more challenging things that your customers value. So now that we have goals, let's talk about metrics. What are metrics? Metrics are tools that help us measure how well something is doing. They give us information to evaluate progress and make smart decisions. However, it is only useful if you know what you're going to do with the metrics. So in InnerSource, good metrics are easy to collect, easy to understand. They're representative of the question or expected outcomes, and they are useful if they are most useful if they are actionable. But if not, they should be informative. It doesn't have to be too precise, but it should be informative enough. And so, because remember, we are managing a product. We are not scientists, so ultimately the precision doesn't matter that much. So we have here, and these are pretty good goals: enhancement, bug fixes, support, etc., right? Now, when you have your metrics, it is good to be strategic about them, right? So there's a couple of techniques that we can use, which I'll cover. But first, there's a story. So a police officer stumbles across a drunk man fumbling around under a street light. The policeman asks, "What are you doing?" The drunk man says, "I'm looking for my keys." Policeman said, "Where'd you leave them? Where'd you last see it?" Drunk man says, "Over there in that alley." The policeman says, "Why are you looking over here?" Drunk man says, "This is where the light is." So this story illustrates the danger of many types of scientific and data project, right? Because if you measure productivity, for example, you can't stick an MRI machine on the heads of all your employees to see how motivated they are. You have to measure secondary or information. And sometimes it's just the best that you have, right? You can only derive information by looking at the street light and try to figure it out from there. So we have goal, question, metrics, right? That is why it's important to start with what you're looking for, not what you're looking at, right? So with this strategy, it was developed by Victor Basili in the 1980s, I believe. We can have more meaningful conversations about what we're trying to measure. So we start with the goal, what we're trying to achieve, then we go on to the questions that support those goals, and then ultimately we come up with the metrics that will support the questions. So, for example, the question is, how often do customers encounter bugs or issues with our software? A metric that you can use is customer reported issue, the number of customer reported issues. The question can then be how easy is our software to use? The metric usability ratings, for example, right? So you see goal, question, metrics, question, metrics. So all of the question and the metrics support the goal. However, if you have with the metric start with the metric customer reported issues, you might have difficulty figuring out why you're doing this. It's easier. It's much more productive to start with your goals. Another strategy to use is the plan, do, check, act cycle. So you start with you can start with a plan. For example, identify a high rate of customer reported bugs and set a goal to reduce the number of bugs by 50%. That's the plan. Do, implement a new testing process and collect data on bug rates. You analyze the data and you find that the number of bugs has decreased by 40%. Then you act, which means that you make adjustments to the testing process and continue monitoring the bug rates. Because you are most likely not going to get the metrics right to begin with. You need to be open to the idea of iterating this through and constantly re-evaluating whether you're on the right path or not, and improving. You may never finally find those keys, but you would have gathered enough information to know which part of the dark alley it's in, which may be enough. Right. So here's a lovely example. IBM Watson. These slides are from a talk originally given by Jeffrey Borick. He talks about their transformation to InnerSource. Right. So you see that in this part we have it is split up into the contribution, right? where you contribute to the InnerSource project, right? And then you have the adoption phase, right? Which makes it very clear the roles about who is doing what in this ecosystem. Now the metrics are interesting because it maps, right? You have the contribution numbers, right? 50 contributors, 12 contributors. These are part of the contributors. And then we also have numbers regarding adoption. So you see that over here, there are 15 products, product teams in the first 18 months, and with 75% less time to value delivered, and $10 million saved through reuse alone, which are significant numbers and very, very good metrics. This is probably the kind of things that your managers would love to hear. So let's look at one such approach for our silo breaking effort. We want to see which contributor, which business units contribute, interact with each other the most. So we use the network analysis metrics. Let me break it down. So we start with a project. This can be code, documentation, anything really. This project has a contributor. In this case, we'll say it's a developer. We draw a line to show that the developer has contributed to the project or has interacted with has committed to the project. Right? And we can keep drawing those lines to show each interaction. And ultimately, these are the beautiful graphs that we can come up with to show the layout of the patterns of interactions within your organization. So then you can start seeing where the silos are, right? You can see items. You can see these guys are working in the by themselves on the periphery, right? You can see 2 major projects, or over here 3 major projects, and there is some cross interaction. But then you can see that these are all continents, so not so much silos, but they're continents. So that kind of thing. So with visualization like this, with metrics like this, then you can start having an idea on how to make changes and to assess the health of collaboration within your organization. So this is all generated by the free open source Grimoire Lab. So these are continents, communities versus archipelagos. This is a one project developer versus many project developers. You can see that they're contributing to many projects. This is, you can see collaboration. These, you can see the lines showing collaboration, while these are isolated projects on the periphery. Knowledge silos and continent communities. So you can see that there's a clear dividing line. So there's a line dividing that part and that part, and up and down, right? So this is a tool. It's open source at the Linux Foundation. It collects and displays data. It supports 30 plus collaboration platforms, and there's a whole bunch of metrics that are included. And with the InnerSource community, there is a pattern. So if you choose to take this approach and you start implement metrics in your organization, please don't do it alone. We have a community, the InnerSource community. Come and talk to us about the metrics that you choose to implement, and let's share some your knowledge, right? Because that way it is more likely, as I said, the more street lights out there, the more likely we'll find our keys together, right? So here also metrics in InnerSource. This is an example. So you can see that these are patterns for contribution and collaboration. Darker numbers means more contributions, and then you can see here, for example, the number of top PRs open and commits made. So you can see that these are probably some good candidates to come and be your trusted committers. in an InnerSource, that means it's sort of like a maintainer. So you can invite them to come and be a maintainer or a trusted committer for your internal projects, right? Policy metrics measure the application of so let me start that again. So the goal here is to increase coding collaboration, right? When you are breaking down metrics, you want to increase the collaboration. So one of the things that you can do is to use a root cause analysis to see the factors that hinders collaboration. So so after a root cause analysis, you might come to the conclusion that the commits are too big and they are difficult to review and fix. If they're difficult to review and fix, then it's just ignored. And the person making the contribution is then quite sad and upset. So, so one way to fix it is to start reducing the size of the commits, for example. Sorry, yeah. So another thing is to continue with the analysis. So we have the questions, right? How far are we applying our policy? So we have policy metrics. See the evolution of lines per commit. We can track the lines of commit and see whether they're going down or not. Then we can see if the policy is succeeding. So we can see the median review time. Then are we being misled by circumstances? Are we causing unwanted side effects? So we can track the other metrics for the context. So the number of PRs issued per time frame as a stress metrics, for example. So with metrics, great power bears great responsibility, right? There are, because you're looking only where the lights are, it's a slippery slope with a lot of issues. So which is why I stress again, seek help from the community. Right? Share what you're trying to do, and let us build up a database of metrics together. So we are standing on the shoulder of giants here. There's been a lot of work done both by the InnerSource Commons as well as the Chaos community. And we can see, if we can get this to move. Yes. So this is the Chaos community website. chaoss.community. You can go in there and you can look through the metrics that they have. So let us look through, for example, the contribution metrics. So you can see we have metrics, types of contribution, activity, dates and time to first response, burstiness. So let's see time to first response, for example. So we have descriptions. The first response is an activity that can sometimes be the most important response. We have objectives. Time to first response is an important consideration for new and long-time contributors to a project, along with overall project health. We have implementation guidelines, etc., There's visualization. A lot of information about metrics is available. So please look through the website. These work for open source projects as well as InnerSource projects. So please look through it and see what you can find what you find helpful. And subsequently, if you find that you can contribute an improvement, please open a pull request. And so back to our slides. In summary, suggest that you implement your metrics. You implement them early on. So if you're a startup, we suggest that you do it early on in your journey. Please don't roll your own metrics, a bit like crypto. Don't roll your own because you are very, very likely going to make mistakes. Please seek help from the community while you're doing this. And so before I go, I just want to acknowledge these entities for their contribution to these slides. And I'm done. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'm assuming that basically for the network diagram, that in Git repos basically, right?
Basically, I believe that those are combinations. So we can extract data from GitHub, GitLab,
Okay.
as well as other platforms.
On the operational side, so I'm talking about like incident tickets and stupid service request stuff. You use that. I mean, is the technology available to do the integration basically?
To do the integration with incident tickets?
Yeah, service now tickets.
Yes. So it integrates with over 30 platforms, okay. And it has a plugin architecture, so it can support even more. Okay. But most of the popular platforms are supported by Grimoire. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? No. Okay. Well, thank you very much. My apologies for the delay, but let's say putting some of those ways. Now, for our next session, we have William, the open source evangelist at Python. He is the board member of the Apache Software Foundation. He works on many Apache software projects. And before Python, William was the open source legal expert at Huawei. Today, he's going to give a talk on building bridges between foundations and tech companies. Over to you, William.
Thank you. I'm really happy to share my experience with that. Here, a story about myself. I'm not. First of all, I'm mentor of Apache Foundation in Korea, and I'm director of the Apache Software Foundation. And the most important thing is I just want to share the story of how I started out communication, and now I'm also an open source evangelist of Python, and formerly I'm a for Huawei, and I used to work for Red Hat as a principal software engineer. My experience is I work close with software foundations and big tech companies, and as open source become more and more popular, more and more tech companies set up open source software program office called FOSSASIA to manage the organization's usage of the open source software. And another part, another one part is engagement of the open source community. For the inbound things, is provide a centralized coordination of open source software activity across the organization, help management legal and compliance risks associated with the open source software, to improve the organization's stability, to contribute to the development of the open source, and enhance the organization reputations within the open source community. There are some challenges of the also. That's my habit. First is language and cultural barriers. I will put a lot of attention on that. Besides it, there are some other challenges such as legal and compliance, challenging competitions, and limited resources. To address these issues, we need to build bridge between the big companies and open source community. I engage with the global open source community and contributing to the open source projects. The big companies can benefit from the innovations and the collaborations that open source software enables. Back to the favorite part, the cultural difference. I just want to introduce a book from the famous sociologist Fei Xiaotong. He wrote this book called Soul in 1947. It's talk about Chinese society different from the Western society. This book was written in Chinese, but there was an English translation for Chinese reader. And Fei explains the difference between the two societies and reflect the moral and aesthetic values of the people living in those societies. In Western society, it's like part of the fireworks in the field. There's several groups that band together and several bundles into a pack. Each piece of the wood could be found in the same bundle, and there's a clear circle, and it's well divided and no chaotic. Just like the code of conduct, if we want to join the community and the people are not know each other, but for the Chinese society, it's like ripples. When stone thrown into the water surface, and it's just push out like a circle. Each person's in certain circles that push out by his social influence. And the connection just happens into this ripple together. Just like if we want to build some connections, we have to meet them in person. And in China, there's a lot of people strong attached with the blood and identify the region. So the relatives just can help each others, and but for the strangers, that could be different. Just like the circle. So if you want to work with others, you need to make them as 自己人. So put them into the center of the circle. When I talk to the local developer, and most of them use the open source software daily. On the contrary, only a few of them just contribute to the upstream community. It's primarily due to the cultural difference. Open source community just speak a different language, maybe English. Somehow, far from them, reach out invisible, unfamiliar developers through the email simultaneously, just like an insecure feeling. And just like I said, the traditional Chinese culture is different, different model association. If we share the same identity, it will more easier for us to build the collaborations, connections. It makes social, it makes a local mentorship and project meetup be crucial to bring those people on board. Back to the Apache Software Foundations, it's a virtualized organization made up of volunteers around the world. As a mission is provide software for the public good. That's the developer focus on the coding, while the foundation provides related service such as infrastructures, legal entities, and Apache trademark protection, legal protection framework, and it also provides guidance for the open source projects. And I think this provides a common place for the tech companies, developers to work together. As an incubator is the official entry point for the project to enter ASF, and it should help those community to build the Apache way, aka community over code. I practice the community over code. ASF strongly emphasizes project success. As a successful and can continue to thrive over a long term. We learn each other from by learning by doing and help each other as a community. So this provides a very good place to make friends, and as a local mentor, I think we can go far from here, and instead of provide the mentorship, we can build up the connection and trust. It's a great opportunity for Apache local community, for Apache local commuters and potential coding projects to connect with ASF officers. And so I organized the 2 meetups in Shanghai, and I got the opportunity to invite Craig, Rose, and Justin, and to visit to China in 2018 and 2019. This meetup is extremely successful, and we exchanged a lot of sophisticated thoughts on community buildings, and this meetup made a benefit to a project directly. One good piece of evidence is that Shakespeare and APS6 found their incubator mentor immediately after the meetup. In the end of 2019, I heard about local community plans from the community that I suddenly realized this is a great opportunity. I can do more. As more polling projects join together to hold the co-located meetup in Beijing, I was triggered by the idea of building actually local community in Beijing and to spread the awareness of the Apache local community and host the various events for the open source enthusiasm and share the information of the Apache software foundations, and most important, bring people and together. So this is the first Zoom meeting, and if you take a look at the time, that's the pandemic, and we were all locked down as we had this kind of meetings, discuss what we can do to spread awareness of the Apache. And I was quite excited about sharing this with the local community, and we hold these bi-weekly meetings running for 3 years. In 2000 August, we held the first personal meetup to show the Apache success story within the local community, and we inspiring more developer and talent college students to join the open source development. Besides the holding the events, we are also publish articles and making a podcast. And we're also doing some translation work to build the content, spirit, and awareness of the Apache project and the Apache people. We invited the graduated incubating project PMC members to share their open source journey in the podcast in Chinese, and to promote Apache values and open source culture in China. Along with the community, we also built what I cannot imagine. With the company's support for the sponsors, charities, volunteers, we successfully hosted this virtual conference. LC Beijing was home and made a big step to boost the local awareness of the Apache Software Foundation. And I cannot describe how I proud I'm to see everything start from scratch, and how grateful I'm for generous help from the community support I received. And besides the LC Beijing, we also started LC Shenzhen and plan to start LC Xi'an, and I just work as the mentor. And I'm passionate about championing those incubating projects and help them to go through the incubating process. As an incubating mentor, I'm very proud to see the graduation of the stories and meetings. By running the local community, we bring the Apache project developer together. It's provide the win-win solutions with the big tech companies knows how to contribute to the upstream, and actually our projects can work with these new grants to tackle the common technical program. It's really a great experience for me to see more and more Apache developers can work together across the company border to build a virtual, to build a Thrive ecosystem. So I let it sum up. we can build the circle tailored to the local community to establish the connection to the people quickly. Just make the direct connection, and later the champion should be capitalistic for our own people. We call this 自己人, and the mentorship is quite is one at the best bonding agent, and we can develop awareness by earning credits in public by working in public. Okay, so you can get in touch with by through the email, and this is Twitter, and this is a WeChat public account about LC Beijing. If you can subscribe it. That is the story I want to share.
Thank you. Any questions? Any questions? Okay, thank you very much. By the way, Okay. So we are going to be now having Rohan Sood, the CEO of Scientist, as well as Asandya Sharma, the CTO of Security AI, and they are going to be talking about open source LLMs for the win. Over to you.
Thank you. Open source large language models. This is something that obviously came in mind way back when our friends at first thought how they will build large language models. They didn't know any seemed to indicate that it was going to be open source, but it wasn't. So Asangya and I, we've both had a background in working in open source security specifically. And one of the immediate thought processes that we had once this started happening the foundation of people, and once a lot of open source models start coming about is, what are the applications, when will open source kind of keep pace with what is happening from a commercial standpoint, when can we train our own models and we run our own models. And just in the time between when we proposed this to now and delivering this, everything has changed, right? People thought we would not be able to run large language models locally for a year, but now we're running it on the MacBooks and the Llama and the Chinchilla, and it doesn't never end. But what we're going to talk about is kind of a specific part. We're looking at large language models for code. Again, when we first started, there were separated models for code. Even OpenAI had Codex, and now it's no longer there. It seems that there may be just general purpose large language models, but then the list goes on, right? All the way from CodeBird, which was kind of the pioneer in some sense, to AlphaCode, CodeGen, and then this Codex. Tango Coder, for those who don't know, is Huawei's code generating LLM. For Pilot is a version of Copilot, which kind of trying to do Llama or Crane on specific data 2 days ago. This morning, Amazon made public Code Whisperer, so everybody can use it. It's free for individual developers. So code generation for large language model is great. I don't know about your experience, but my experience with using ChatGPT for generating code was similar to how I use Stack Overflow. I remember it looking back at that time, where you were like, great, I just need to ask it and it'll fix it for me. I need to think about how to actually fix it. So there's this meme, I really liked it. I know people are crying about the impact of AI and take away their jobs, but I think developers are generally happy, like less body code to write, less unit testing, less fixing of stuff. So that's great. No more readability, no more comments, and so on. So a lot of models for code are existing, and there's open source, there's commercial models. I think in the long run, open source models win, as we have seen with all software, right? Open source models will be kind of the defining victory, and there are certain things beyond what open source generally does for software. There's certain principles that we all are aware of, but when it comes to specifically large language models and AI, there are a few additional advantages that we see. One is data security and privacy, like the ability to train models on your own data securely without having to give it to a third party. That seems like a major win. Alignment and security seems to be another win from a decentralization standpoint. Like if we believe that the collective wisdom is what will help us define alignment for AI, then obviously building an open source model will be the better outcome. There's also cost advantages. As it stands right now, large language models will always be computationally and as a result commercially expensive. So open source models should win out in the long run for that. And there are other aspects like training data. If you are releasing an open source model and we were to just do a very simplistic extension of the open source code licensing models out there, you could theoretically train on a lot more data because you're open sourcing your output. So as a result, you could theoretically train on GPL data or any kind of copyleft data as well, as long as you are able to reciprocate the license and so on. So it opens up much larger data sets for you. So we think open source models should win. And then when we look at coding, though, there is still obviously a gap. Now that's the long run. In the short run, the coding models aren't that good, right? Or any open source model isn't yet that good. We're getting there, but there is a big difference. So when we look at code generation, which is your left to right code generation, writing new code, right? boilerplate code, asking it to write a certain amount of code for a given problem statement, the commercial models do a very good job. But then, as Asankhya and I were talking, one thing that we realized is a lot of code writing is actually not doing left to right code generation from scratch. It is actually editing code. It's about fixing code, it's about maintaining code, it's about extending and modifying code. So when we look at something called fill in the middle, which is kind of on the right side, these are aspects when you're basically saying that there's a preceding code and a PostScript code, and then you ask the large language model to generate code to fill in the middle. And based on the research that was available, it became very clear that while for code generation, your open source model like CodeGen and Santa Coda had a very low pass at one rate. Pass at one, I think, is just to simplify, is basically multiply that number by 100 is the percentage rate of success at the first attempt that you ask the LLM or the AI to do something, right? So you would have very varying differences between commercial models and open source models. But when it came to fill in the middle for code generation, the difference was a lot smaller. And in fact, you had open source models doing a little bit better. Why is that? Well, there are a lot of speculations in terms of why that is. One is that it needs a smaller model. The other is that it's trained purely on code, so it's not necessarily required to be constrained by all the limitations of natural language. But effectively, we saw this one opportunity because we were trying to find a use case that open source models could use as a first victory against commercial models, and within our understanding of the space. And another thing that we saw, and goes back to our experience with open source security and so on, is that there was kind of this report by Stanford late December, which talked about how the generated code was going to be insecure, right? And we had that experience. Sakya was aware of code. I'm still at ScanDist. It's a local cybersecurity startup and it focuses on application security. And we've had that experience where end users and clients really struggle to fix vulnerabilities in their code. So those two things combined gave us kind of an interesting idea, which was like, since fill in the middle was basically editing code, and there was a concern about insecure code, even with generated code and otherwise, can we find a way to use open source large language models to fix vulnerabilities? And can we do it in a way that is potentially better than what's out there from a commercial large language model standpoint? And that's kind of the thesis of what we try to do. And to be honest, not we, most of the work's done by Sankhya. I'm not half as smart as he is. But this was kind of the idea that we're working on. And I think Sankhya will now talk about all the exploration that we did since then.
Right. Thanks, Rohan. So when we looked at this problem back in late November, early December, there were very few models for source code which could actually do fill in the middle or bug fixing, right? And one of the models that came in December last year was this thing called Santa Coda. There are some attractive properties about how they built and trained this. So first of all, it's actually from BigCode, which is this large scientific open collaboration. It's backed by Hugging Face and ServiceNow. And the key difference among, compared to what OpenAI did or what others did, is that they trained it on data set where they respected the people's licenses, right? So it's trained on this data set called the stack. It contains 6 terabytes of permissive data. So they scanned GitHub, they analyzed all the millions of repos, but they extracted the licensing from the repositories, right? And what you see here is the eventual data set which came in after near deduplication actually consists only of these set of licenses, right? So one of the benefits is if you're using Santa Coda is that the code that it spews out is actually permissively licensed compared to say, OpenAI or whatever, right? So that's one of the benefits. And the second thing is they actually have an opt-out. So even if you're a open source developer and so they have this data set available, you can just submit your repository onto it, and the next time when they train the model for the next iteration, your code is removed from it, right? And I think they've done it quite, I would say, once a month or so quite frequently. So if you really want your code not to be included, there is a mechanism to do it, right? And I don't know anyone else, even including commercial companies, which provide this, right? So there are a lot of attractive properties of this data set and the model. It still is very diverse. So if you look at the terms of programming languages, so the checkpoints that they released in December are for three languages, Java, JavaScript, and Python were probably the three most common languages, but it has many different languages. The dataset itself has in it. And now, like Rohan mentioned, a lot changed since December, right? So this is still a GPT-2 style model, which is at the time when it was released, it was competitive with what was available, but probably today with GPT-4 or whatever, it's no longer as competitive, right, for code generation. So this was the base model which we started, and very quickly I'll just show you a little bit of how it works. So let me go back here and hopefully. So I actually wanted to show you the demo that they have, right? And for some reason it's editing out, right? But the good thing is about open source is that I could just, I was sitting back there, I could just work it, and then this what was the issue, and then I could just run it here, right? So the only problem is I don't have a GPU grant, so it takes a while to run. But one of the things to remember about this model is that it is not like a dialogue model. So people who are very familiar with ChatGPT now, you can't expect it to say, hey, give me this or write this answer. You have to use it like code completion. So you start off writing either some doc strings or you write comments of what you want to do, and then the model will actually generate it. So in this case, let me just copy this over here. And what you can see is, right, so I gave it a prompt and then it generated this piece of Python for detecting odd numbers, and then I think it just started on its own, right? The good thing about this model compared to some of the others, the only other model which is open source which does infilling is encoded by Facebook. You can actually do infilling, so you can actually define a token here, so which will, so instead of actually just doing completion, you can actually say, okay, I think there's some bug here or there's something missing, and I want you to fill this part here. Right, and then let's just wait for a few seconds. Hopefully, it will fill a code. Right. Okay. So you see, it generated the actual code earlier, right? So this part where you can actually go down and open and do this infilling, right? And that's important for the use case we want to use model for. So let me go back to my slides. Right. So when we looked at it, we wanted to apply this model for a particular downstream task, and the task that we had in mind was vulnerability fixing, right? The most common way to do it is using supervised fine-tuning. So typically, a GPT-style model is trained using causal language modeling. So you have some context on the left-hand side, and then you have a place where you want to predict the mask, and then that's the token that you predict. So it goes from left to right, right? This is in contrast to something called mask language modeling, where you may actually in the text itself have places where tokens are marked as marks, and then you try to predict what the token is, right? So an example of a mask language modeling is BERT, which is trained with mask language modeling, right? So then how, I just showed you an example of how you could do infilling with Santa Coda, right? So how does a model which is a GPT-2 style can actually do infilling even though it's trained with a causal language modeling? So there was a technique which came last year where people, what they did is they realized that you can actually convert this infill kind of problem to causal language modeling problem. And what you do is you just take this token, right? You add some new tokens to say, okay, prefix, and then add some code, and then add some suffix, and then this is the middle. So what you do is you transform this by generating another token, and then this is the problem that you give to the model. So it takes some code here, but eventually just you fill it back up from where you came, right? So you use special tokens to mark in the code what is the beginning and end of the text or the code, and then you bring it back up, right? So we use this with the idea to do to prepare a data set for bug fixing. So what we do is like we have some code, and then there's a buggy line. So for this work, we focused on single line fixes because it was just simple and easy to do. But similar idea could be extended to multiple lines within the same context, right? So what we do is then we have to create some prompt for the model to consider while fixing. So then we say, okay, there is a bug. This is the CWE, so these are all vulnerabilities. We comment the actual bug, and then we put in a fixed version or the fixed line, right? And then we insert these special tokens. So then we say, okay, this is the prefix, there is something in the middle, and then there's a suffix, and then there is end of text, right? So all the data set we look at actually looks like this. So, right? To give you a more concrete example, so this is an actual bug or a vulnerability in a Java program. So this is from a real CVE. So we transform it. So this is the actual line of code which was there, right? And then we add this bug, and then another fixed line, and then we insert the actual fix. Right? So this whole thing is actually the input for training. So our data set consists of examples like this, right? And then you can train it in a standard way because it's a GPT-2 style model. So you can use the, there is a special fine-tuning script which Big Code has provided, or you could use the usual Hugging Face transformer script. You just need to be careful that you need to add these special tokens in. Otherwise, the model will not know what these stand for, right? So make sure you have special token in, and then you can run it. You can run it on single GPU very easily, right? So this is just a test run which I have from Colab, right? So we took a CVE fixes dataset, which is published last year, and from which we extracted these single line fixes. So that's the dataset on which we trained or fine-tuned our model. The dataset is available. We call our model the Santa Fixer, right? So this is the model which has been fine-tuned for fixing. Now, once we had this, we realized that, and this is now again quite popular with the whole chaining and giving language model tools. But what we could do is we could combine a static analyzer with a large language model to automatically detect and fix vulnerabilities, right? So the way it works is that you have some input, right? You scan it with the static analyzer, you find some vulnerability, then you use the language model to prompt it, and then generate a fix, right? Then you take a fixed input and then scan it again with the same analyzer, and you continue doing this until you find that it's been fixed, right? And then you output the fix. So in our work, we built a tool which is also open source, and I'll show you in a minute how it works, called AutoFix. We use Semret, which is an open source static analyzer. And for the large language model, we use Santa Fixer. But basically, you could use any combination. You could use a commercial static analyzer, or you could use another model to do the generation. You could even use an open AI's API to actually, if you want to generate code, right? But the idea is that you use this closed loop to generate different options, and then keep scanning continuously with your analyzer until you finally fix the problem, right? So let me give you a quick view of how it works. So the tool is open source. You can actually go ahead and get it. There's some instructions on how to use it. I'm going to just run this here, and while I talk about it, hopefully by the time we're done, I will have a fixed issue, right? So here's an example to show you the Java one. So this is an actual one. So there is actually a vulnerability here. There's a parameter which comes in, and then you're directly creating a file from it, and then this could be an issue. So if you run it, it creates an intermediate, the prompt file. So first it will detect the vulnerability, and then we generate this kind of a prompt. So says, okay, this is the vulnerability. You're not restricting the path name to directory. This was the line which is commented, and then it prompts the model to actually infill or fix the bug using fill here, right? And eventually, once it's finished, it would have something like this, right? So then it will actually generate and fill the code here. So instead of directly using the image, it puts it into an attribute and so on. I'll give you an example from this, which might be more familiar. So here we have, we're using MD5 hash, right? So when we scan it, we would see that Semret would actually flag it as deep use of token or XKLU. So it will say, okay, this is MD5, you should use it, and then it will prompt it to fill. And then when you see how it is eventually fixed, we have the fix here. So it actually says we use SHA, right? So this is still running. Let me go back here. Okay. So this is still running, so but it's actually quite nice to watch this fix in real time. This is an example I recorded from earlier. So you can see that the model tries various combinations and keep on iterating until I find something where the static analysis will not flag a vulnerability. Right? So okay, still running. Maybe we'll come back. Oh, did I fix it? All right, so you can see it's actually trying out different combinations. So this is the example which I just gave in, right? So I think the issue here is that this is coming from a request parameter, so and then it's been passed in the response directly, and you can see it's finding out various combinations. I don't think it worked this time. Okay, so let me go back. Right. All right. So we built this, and then we wanted to see, like, you know, how good or how well it would work in practice. So we tried to test it on a data set of vulnerabilities from top 1,000 projects on GitHub, which is scanned using Sender, right? And this data set is also something we have published. So on that, what we see is, so typically the way you would have seen the results are reported as like pass at 1 and pass at 10. But what it means is that pass at 1 means that you just take one generation output, and so it's able to fix like 25% with just one pass or one output. But if you do typically 10, like the one which I showed you in default, by default we do 10, it can actually fix half of the things, and this is for various languages, right? I didn't have the capacity of the GPU to try pass at 100, which is also some metric people typically report, right? Yeah, that's pretty much it. So the model as well as the tool, it's open source, it's available. We just published it this week, so I'll invite you guys to try it out, and that's our talk. Happy to take any questions.
Yeah, so I'm guessing this, what you mentioned, you alluded to it, this is being run locally, these more on small autocars. Yeah. And so since you designed it, what's your ideas for making more portables that way? Response times are fast, the runtime is fast, therefore
so
you all get feedback.
Yeah, so I think one thing is, I mean, I don't have a GPU, so it runs fairly. So this is running on my CPU. So whatever you said, so it's already. So this particular model, it's not too bad because, like I showed you, it's still a GPT-2 style model. So it has like less than close to 1 billion parameters, right? So, but there are things which just today, I think in the latest release of Hugging Face Transformers, there is a GPT Big, which is a fast inference-based transformer, which actually is being contributed by Santa Code. That will actually speed it up quite a bit. There is some other work people have done which we have not tried, with the around seeing how you can actually compress some of the weights. So ideal would be if you can take a model like this, which is fine-tuned on very specific problems, so like vulnerability fixing, and reduce it to, say, you know, less than 50 MB or something, so that I can put it in my Visual Studio Code as a plugin, right? So I think it's possible, but we haven't like spent too much time on that. But what you saw today is just CPU. So in GPU, it's actually fairly fast. Yeah.
Yeah, so just wanted to double check. So you were talking about a GPT-2 style model. Are you training from scratch? I said, you know, the base models, which I think let's talk about ethical data set. Right? So was that ethical data set trained from scratch, or were you using some kind of?
So the big code collaboration trained the Santa Coder model from scratch on the stack, the data set, which is the 6GPU permissive data set, right? We fine-tuned it from there to a particular downstream problem. Yes, but the original model, the Santa Coder, is, and that is the only one which I know has been like, it's you can't get code which is not permissive there because it's not trained on. Yeah.
Do you where do you see human AI collaboration going as far as programming language evolution is concerned?
Yeah. So
do you have any ideas?
I think we talked So we talked about it.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, sure. So the question is, where do you see human AI collaboration? And I think as it stands right now, you can't let these tools run unsupervised, right? Even, for example, the pass at 10 that we're doing here, it only makes sure that the static analyzer no longer says it's vulnerable. but you might have broken the entire code base as a result. So who knows, right? So there's still a lot of kind of supervision, human supervision required, even if you are running the AI to do all the code. Even if you don't write a single line of code, I think you still need supervision. And I think I personally don't see that going away anytime soon, especially for code maintenance. Writing new boilerplate code, yes, it will be largely unsupervised. But that is never the problem. When you go to large organizations, large projects, I think the maintenance and I think Sanjay had some ideas on this as well. You need models that are trained on that, and then even then they will need supervision.
So, I mean, I think people get really freaked out about this. With like every day there is some new, set of tools and chains, and people are talking about auto GPT, and you can just tell the model what to do, it keeps running. I think they're getting a little ahead of themselves. So all the cases that you see, they're actually very, very simple. So I'll believe it when I see, a large language model able to install, I don't know, NVIDIA driver on a new jetpack. I mean, can it install? I mean, it took hours for me to. So those were actually familiar to make this work. So I would believe it if it can install the NVIDIA jetpack on a, embedded device from scratch. It's insane. So there's still a lot of room. I think for simple tasks, which I believe is maybe 80% of the development is like that, take something from a database, display on a, UI, and then maybe that's where it's shining in, but there's a lot of scope, there's still a lot of room. And there are ways in which we could improve. So one of the things we wanted to do was, like, we don't really learn from the failure of like, if it doesn't generate a fix, like, we don't explain it. So one of the things we could do is to see, like, ask the model to explain why it failed into. But in all this talk, like, yeah, I mean, this is a running joke, like, if I would believe, like, if it could install NVIDIA driver on a machine, because that's insane. If you have to do it, because like at Security, I've worked with a lot of embedded systems recently, and you need a specific version of Python with a specific version of people who do it laughing, right? The Jetpack with a specific version. It takes 2 days for me to take an actual device commercially from Lenovo, set it up, and then build it to a point where I can run my code on it, right? So I think there's still a lot of room. So it's in a very similar category to what you said, like Stack Overflow at this point. So do I use it? Yes, I use it, but I use it as similar to how I would do, like, look for some information, get something out, and then do. So the other problem is, it's hard to actually get the model to do what you really want if it goes down this path of, like, it keeps telling you the wrong thing, right? So I teach at SMU, I just finished a course on computational thinking, and some of the problems there, I mean, like traveling sales model, so we teach about this heuristics and so on, right? So when you try to ask it, and then you try to change something in a way that you want, right? Like you would to another human, they would take that input and act on it. But if you try some of these models, they just keep going and just track what they call like hallucinating or whatever. It doesn't backtrack. So once it starts on a path, and every time you say it will say, I apologize, this is not correct, but it will just spit out something which is again garbage. So I would encourage you to try it out, and what you realize for novel problems, for problems which probably is not being trained on, or you're trying to ask it a particular question, it's hard to get it to do what you want, right? Even today. So I think, despite all this progress,
we tried some of these on GPT 3.5, GPT-4 as well, like just like, obviously there's no API access yet. I'm waiting for that though. Like I put on a OpenAI eval request with the Singapore PSLE questions and answers, and apparently GPT-4 does worse than GPT-3 with that. Just do it.